reading. Plus, I do not open my mouth when I talk, so I'm really bad for people who want to lip read because I have big giant lips. But I'm really good at lip reading. I grew up watching American sports, and I love it when they cut to the coach and he's like, "You, ever since I was a kid, I loved that." And bad lip reading. I don't know if it's still around, but that it would have me in tears. I would be laughing so hard at it. Oh man, we've almost made it to 4 hours. I'll go for 4 hours. Because here at the Godless Sewing channel, we do not play. We do not do short streams. I come here to settle and hang out. I get my wings in the first 2 hours, you know. I'm partially deaf, so I can lip read. Absolutely. Note to self, if I ever visit Godless and want to keep a phone call private, put a card over my... Oh, Kilroy. Like, honestly, I should work for the Alphabet Boys. Between my Google Foo and my lip reading, like, I am no joke. I am dead to rights when it comes to Google Foo. Like, that's how I found that guy who was stalking me online, because I just did a bunch of logical steps. I would be so out of luck if...
Or no.
Do you want to know how we did it?
Well, I'd like to know that, but when you're done with that, will you tell me what you think the biggest factor is? Because if they still have guns and there are no mass shootings, I'd like to know like how they got there.
The government got its agenda. It got the laws it wanted, so it stopped doing false flags.
What?
Okay, but I'm interested in 420.
I'm sorry. Conspiracy theory alert. Conspiracy theory alert.
What that looks like.
So, well, the way that they went about the new laws was no one went and enforced anything. There was an amnesty, which means regardless of where you got the guns that were now illegal.
Right. So the claim is that you have amnesty if you obtain guns illegally in the first place, and now we're still going to buy them from you as long as you come clean with the guns, right? So there's like, yeah, I think they did this with drugs as well. Like,
and you didn't just have to give them in; they were bought, drugs. So you had no financial loss. And that was it. And there was a period of time, and then the law kicked in. People still kept their guns illegally, the ones that refused to give them up. It just means now you're breaking the law. Let's hope you don't get caught. But we didn't have police kicking people's doors down going, we know you've got fully automatics in here, and having shoot-offs and like, I don't know that wouldn't be the case in America, but I'm just saying that didn't happen. The law came in.
And so Sammy's point right there is, that is the conspiracy, right? That's the fear. The fear that, oh, well, what are they going to do? Come kick your doors in, take your fucking firearms and your munitions. Is that going to happen? Probably not, but we'll continue to fear that scenario.
Few people arced up about it because originally they weren't going to pay and you were just going to lose your guns. But then the government turned around and decided to pay for them.
But here's the issue, though. That's still a huge problem because you lose the right to legally defend yourself.
No, just with that type of gun.
Which is the best one to defend yourself with?
Whoa, hold on.
It's also the best one to shoot the most people with.
Sammy, hold on.
Amount of time.
Okay, so now specifically we're talking about assault rifles, right? Assault style weapons. And I wanted to make a point about this during the show because there have been multiple bans like this. Like they had the one on handguns, which started in California, I believe, and then went to the federal level. And they had extended magazines and silencers. That's another one. So there's a few of these. They're like, okay, we're going to restrict access to certain weapons because they have a history with kind of this mass violence or random violence. The other one's random violence, like drive-by shootings, right? That was one thing. There's a specific issue they were trying to tackle, and now you're talking about mass shootings at schools, which is kind of amorphous. It's not really the issue of the gun that was used, it's the issue of the psychology of the person. But they're like, well, if we can restrict the type of guns these people tend to use to kill people en masse, then okay, well, that's, yeah, okay.
I'm still interested in
that'll depend on.
why you think the mass shootings stopped, and then maybe we can talk to Flow State about.
So
I don't think he ever said the mass shootings. He said that most people surrendered their guns and that there was no instance of the government kicking doors in. I don't think Sammy ever claimed that mass shootings stopped. He didn't say that.
So
the if you were going to go in, or if at least in my experience, what you would defend yourself in the home. Because look, and I'm a proponent of having whatever you want in the house, but what I'm
right. And so this comes down to the issue of, well, what can you have at home? Well, I mean, as it turns out, like what Sammy was saying, you could pretty much have anything you want at home as long as you don't get caught with it. Well, how are you going to get caught with it? Most likely, you're going to get caught with it by taking it out of your home. If you keep it in your home and they have no reason to come into your home, then there's no reason the government would ever catch you with this weapon. So it's a weird type of logic. It's like, they're going to come in and check what types of weapons you have. Nope, that didn't actually happen. Never happens. That's not a thing.
What I'm going to reach for is not a fucking AR-15 on the wall or a fucking shotgun or any of that, right? Like it's a close quarters fucking handgun. If not
a close quarters handgun, is that a type of weapon? No, it is not. And Johnny's gonna the great Johnster Monster. I won't dead name him here. I know who Johnster Monster is now. He's gonna call out, this is a bullshit. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? A close quarters handgun for home defense? Yeah, they make those. No, they don't. Doesn't exist. What are you talking about? In reality, for most home D situations, I think the general consensus is a shotgun with some bird shot and maybe a slug packed in there somewhere that you can use secondarily, right? Because you don't want to really blast the shit out of your own house. Is kind of the idea, which is what's going to happen. You're going to have spray going into the wall in any scenario if you have a decent fucking round, regardless of the situation, right? But you're like, yeah, I'm going to get my home defense pistol because that's a thing. Yeah, all right.
If
cool.
not two. So that's the simple fact of the matter, right? Like most of us in home defense are not reaching for the AR. If you are, I'm going to say, you might want to pick something else because that's not your best choice. But
how many people like that's not they? Okay, I won't get hung up on it, but I protest that.
You're talking like a fucking jackass. You go out there with two guns. You can't do it with one. Fucking don't own any.
yeah.
No. Hold on.
You've never been in. Who said that?
Hold on. Let me address that. Let me address that real quick and easy.
You're gonna come out with one gun?
No. Well, right. Hold on 1 second. So maybe the vest that I grab has two on it already. So that's it. That's as simple answer.
That was not your claim, sir. Yeah, I mean that sounds like a simple answer now that you're backpedaling. But you said you were gonna grab your home defense pistols, sir.
I need two guns? No. But maybe the vest I grabbed, depending on the situation that is at my house, maybe I grabbed the vest that has two on it already, and that's what comes out of the bedroom. That's all I meant, right?
And to answer your previous question, I know what I think, and I know what the powers that be have reported and the studies that have been done, but I don't think that any of those things will work in the States. And I think the reason we don't have mass shootings is purely access. We have people like
wait access to weapons, right? That's very specific. okay, if you don't have the access to the weapons you think would commit mass shootings, but no, wait, because all you really need is a bunch of guns. It doesn't matter. You could have like a bunch of single shot fucking 22 pistols and still commit a mass shooting. So it's like, oh, but it's a lot easier to go get an AR and a couple of mags and pray and spray. But okay, but they don't. Like the dude, the Texas guy, the Whitman, that guy. He shot a bunch of people with like a bolt action rifle, and he was in a fucking tower, right? So no, this does not logically follow.
Like make bombs and blow schools up, blow churches up.
Yeah.
We have stabbings. So we have everything else, but because there's not guns, I can't just go and get a gun if I want to kill someone. So I'm either going to have to stab.
You think more people would be killed en masse using like a vehicle or something, like that dude who drove through the protests? Like that guy could have killed a lot more people if he kept going, right? Like that's really the way to go if you're trying to kill
them or
a mass amount
beat them to death.
Yeah.
How hard would it be for you to get a gun?
I can't kill 20 people in 3 seconds.
Like not
Unless I
having
make
mass
a
shootings
bomb.
doesn't actually deter the violence. Like the violence still happens, they just use other means. It's not shooting people.
Yeah. They're using other means, not shooting people. They still bomb people and stab people and run people over. Yeah, I mean, mass violence still happens. But it's less likely for you to go into a public institution if you don't have, if you're not armed to bear with an assault style rifle. Yes, probably true. Maybe true. I don't know. Is this like a modern phenomenon that we're dealing with right now?
Yeah.
Again, I can bash one person at a time. I can shoot 20 people in a few
But you
seconds.
just said that you can.
And it's much harder to disarm a person with a firearm. It's much, and psychologically, it's more difficult to approach a person with a firearm if you don't understand the depth of the situation, right? Like, because certain people, and I've pointed this out, certain people, and I love these stories, can approach somebody with a firearm who's, waving it around, hasn't used it, for the most part. If they're threatening to use a firearm and another individual knows what they're doing, they can approach that person, close the distance, and make it impossible for that person to logistically shoot them before they can be disarmed, right? And so, but that's those one-off scenarios where somebody's kind of waving a gun around in a social place or something, But, yeah, I don't know.
You can get guns in Australia because people kept their guns.
I can't go, oh
That's not
shit,
what he said.
I'm angry, I want to kill
I feel
someone
like
and go and get
every statement that Sammy has made thus far has been like misquoted and used to turn the conversation into a different direction, which didn't have anything to do with what Sammy actually said. But
a gun in an hour like you
But
can.
nobody who's
It
done a
took
school
me
shooting
6
did
fucking
that.
weeks, by which
But
time I
nobody who
cooled
did a
down.
school
the first time it sounded like he said a cool shooting. Did anybody? That's what
shooting did that. They all have manifestos and they've been talking.
They all have manifestos. No. I mean, most of them do have manifestos, and this is going to be an important point, I think. But yeah, no. But you're saying like, oh, well, because they didn't go out and do it on a whim. Well, okay, well then there's no preventative measure because any preventative measure doesn't prevent. No, wait, that's not what. Hold on, back it up.
Talking about it.
I can't go, oh shit, I'm angry, I want to kill someone and go and get a gun in an hour like you
But
can.
nobody who's
It
done a
took
school
me
shooting
6
did
fucking
that.
weeks, by which
There's nobody in the U.S. who can go get a gun in an hour, as far as I know. Well, okay, maybe there are some places, but that's pretty rare. Yeah, anywhere they're gonna have, generally speaking, you're gonna have is it federal regulation? Well, now I'm not sure. I thought there was a federal regulation on background checks, so that's at least 30 days, but I could be wrong. But that doesn't apply to gun shows and shit like that. But it's not like, okay, you're going to get mad, you get your funds together, and then go down to the gun show. Like, how often does that happen?
But nobody who did a school shooting did that. They all have manifestos, and they've been talking about it, and blah, blah.
That's true. And for the most part, but okay. And no, even if it is, okay. So it should not be that easy to get a gun anyway, right? It doesn't have to do with whether or not you're going to commit a mass shooting or a school shooting. It probably just shouldn't be that easy to get a gun, or should it? Is this constitutional?
Blah. They're all planned out. So they could for sure do it if they were motivated.
And what's the difference between my country and your country?
I mean,
the difference is that your country is on the bottom side of the pizza, sir. Flat Pizza Conspiracy contends that Australia is a burnt piece of the pizza on the bottom half in the lower rear quadrant. It's been overbaked. It's been in the oven too long, and you are now burnt crust, sir.
A lot. Size is one of them, and the amount of guns in circulation is another. But the original answer I gave to the situation was
there was an original answer you gave to this situation, because okay, size is one thing, but the amount is the other thing. And okay, what how many guns of what size should you be able to have? Should they? I don't know.
Said kind of tongue in cheek, but it is actually what I believe.
I think it just comes that.
Wait. It was said tongue in cheek, but it is actually what you believe. But what did you actually say? Because that you didn't make a statement that let's back it up again, because I didn't hear a statement.
Size is one of them, and the amount of guns in circulation is another. But the original answer I gave to the situation was said kind of tongue in cheek, but it is actually what I believe.
Wait, you're talking about the situation where somebody comes into your home, and what do you grab off the wall or out of your, situational toolkit, home defense pistols? That's what you believe, or maybe, is there a statement there? Because I don't actually see it.
I think it just comes that.
So far, I'm glad that we agree.
I would agree that
about the number of guns.
There was a young man.
I would agree that.
And got.
I would agree that
within 3 days, he was fucking shooting up.
Hang on, let John finish.
I
think you're breaking up.
It's called Uvalde.
So I would agree. I think Pixie was definitely the one trying to make the statement there repeatedly, and then John was having a shatty connection, and as did I. So it's hard for participants sometimes to get a word in, and we don't mean to talk over each other, but I definitely heard Pixie clearly over John, but John has been less talkative. So it's hard to kind of regulate these things, right?
All I heard was Uvalde.
Uvalde. That kid got the gun 3 days before.
But he'd been planning it for a long, long time.
Don't matter. Don't matter.
Like I see the.
If he had been planning this for a long time, he got the guns as soon as he could, right? The easiest way he could. But if he had to look a little longer and find them on the street, he still would have done it.
You don't think by the time they're 25 like that.
Your connection is terrible.
Got mental health or something, you think that.
I don't know what your question is. Your connection is bad.
Yeah, I tend to agree on that point.
Yeah, well, you broke up during that.
John's statement was.
I see what you're saying, that the violence is still there, but I see what he's saying too. So hold on, I have a different question going with that, Sammy. Yeah, I agree with you that even if somebody decides they're having a bad day and they get a gun and they go out and decide to take it out on people, right? They're going to do less damage just because it takes, if you don't have an automatic weapon, it's going to take you longer. And if you don't have one that shoots a lot of bullets, then you have to reload, right? So in that aspect, I agree with you there. But I noticed you mentioned bombings. So that, I would think, can hurt far more people at once than even an automatic weapon can.
Right.
So what is the increase in bombings that you've had?
And so the fact that Sammy's going to state here that there's not like a direct correlation to an increase of bombings, or maybe it's been, I don't know, some minimal amount of bombings, doesn't mean that, okay, look at the fucking Unabomber. How many people did the Unabomber kill in one fucking instance? So no, like you have like this problem where if people want to kill lots of other people, they're going to find other ways to do it, and they don't necessarily need an automatic weapon or a semi-automatic weapon or it has nothing to do with guns, really. Like, if people want to kill a bunch of people, they're probably just going to kill a bunch of people. We will find a way that they will. That sounded bad. Okay. So if you want to, okay. So, all right. So we have to reduce the amount of people who want to kill a bunch of people somehow, I guess, is like really the solution.
I think we've had 3 total.
Okay, so not a lot.
No. I just wanted to be honest and say
it's harder to make
one. It's not like there's no way to kill lots of people. You could build a bomb.
It's pretty easy to make one.
I think is an argument against flow state is like, even if you had to wait 6 weeks, if you want a gun, you get a gun. That's great. But the number of people who shoot in anger, or like, you can't argue the reduction, and that's the point.
I don't know of one school shooting where the person had impulsively react out of emotion.
Well, I'm talking about mass shootings, but
well, I mean, that's okay.
Like, so flow state here, like, and this is going to come up a bit. When you're talking about impulsively reacting out of emotion, like they went and they did it, like, that day or the next day, or like, within, no, these are escalating scenarios, right? Where these people feel marginalized, ongoing, there's like a long period of time of this happening, and then they finally get fed up with it and they make a plan, right? So this usually takes a long period of time, but obtaining the weapon is merely one step in the act. It doesn't necessarily matter. You're looking at what the psychology is, the psychopathy behind the person that plots this act out, because they will find a way, regardless of whether it's with firearms or explosives or other chemical weapons, they will find a way to fuck people up if they feel so inclined. And it's, why do they feel this way? That's the question you need to be asking yourself, not how long did it take to get the firearm. That's another, that doesn't actually matter.
That's okay, mass shootings in general, but that's what I'm saying. I've never heard of of any shooting really that it was impulsive, that where the impulse lasted. Stop and listen to me when we finish it.
No, because what you're saying is ridiculous. It's not, just the fact that it's impulsive doesn't mean that it happens in the time span that you think it should happen in. It's not like crime of passion. We don't charge people that way. That's not even the way the law is structured, right? But if you're talking about how do people obtain firearms, well, if somebody's going to obtain a firearm, it makes no difference in these instances whether you give them 3 days or 3 months or 6 months. Makes no difference. If they want to do it, they're going to do it anyway, right? The time span is irrelevant.
Where the impulse, the rage, has lasted so consistently that they were able to go to the store, buy a gun, do the background check, do the thing, because we do have background checks, and they were maintaining that impulsive rage that whole time. Not once have
you seen it, because you can't make that argument. It's absurd. And nobody here is making that argument. That's a straw man.
I agree.
Most of these people are claiming to be systematic abuse.
That's why it should be 6 weeks instead of buy it from Kmart.
Okay, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, there should be a period of time. There should be a check. But that's not, see, I feel like there's separate issues going on here, and people are conflating them as if they're the same fucking issue, and they're not. This is why people who are not in the U.S., I mean, love you, Sammy, but you don't understand the nuance of the issue because you don't understand the nuance of the law. And as long as you don't understand that, we're talking in circles. People are speaking their philosophical minds here, but nobody's actually talking about what the laws mean and what the Second Amendment says. And it's a whole problem.
Hey, Sammy, to answer
Why
your
don't you get a
question,
gun in an
Constitution.
hour in a rage and shoot somebody? You've got to be checked. Are you even mentally stable enough to have a gun?
Nobody's mentally stable enough to have a
Sammy,
gun.
I think to answer your question from earlier, like what's the difference?
Every human being is subject to the whims of emotion. If we were to judge based on that criterion, no human being should ever own a gun.
I think it comes back down to what the people within the country cares about more and their temperament, right? Aussies' temperaments are very different than the temperaments of people in the U.S. and what you and what they've.
But you act like that's like a racial thing. Like, oh, Americans, they just have this temperament. Like it's not something that, no, of course it's culture. Of course it has to do with the culture, the mindset, the way you're brought up, all of those things combined, what you believe your rights are and what the law actually states, right? They all coalesce into this mentality that I need to have a firearm to be Billy Badass so nobody can ever break into my home and steal my shit, right? And then that translates out to all these other realms of, well, now I get to carry my gun whenever I want.
So, a government buyback program would work within Australia, right, and other countries, right? But if they were to do something like that, right, let's say they just want to ban ARs, and the government says, hey, we're going to do a buyback program before.
Let's say they just want to ban that one type of gun, right? Yeah, which is something that's been proposed here. And so I think you bring this up like it's some hypothetical is a bit just disingenuous because this has been proposed in the U.S. repeatedly, and it doesn't work.
Let's say the buyback program is going to last 3 years or 2 years or whatever, right? And the government's willing to give you $5,000 towards, a check or tax credits or whatever, right? Like, I think there's typically, right, you'll think money talks, bullshit walks, right? But the fact of the matter is that more people care about, owning that particular weapon in general than even the money. So it's like more so ideological, right? It's like a part of the culture, so to speak, right? So that's the reason why chances are a buyback program probably wouldn't work. I'm not saying, I say probably, because again, the other thing, people in the U.S. really love other than guns is money, right? So there's a possibility something like that could work, but I doubt it.
Buybacks only work if they have corresponding threat of force with them, like Australia did.
Wait, repeat that.
The buyback program in Australia, if I understand correctly, wasn't actually voluntary. There was implied force in conjunction with it.
Yeah, like if
Right.
if you don't sell it.
Yeah, so they're gonna totally go into this whole side chat about like how fucking punitive is that what it is? Punitive law, right? So if you don't obey the law and we catch you, we're going to punish you. That's the way law enforcement works. But somehow that's like translating into like this Nazi-esque 1984 George Orwell. We're gonna kick in your doors. Big Brother's always watching you. We're going to quantify and measure how much ammunition you have at all times in all places. But no. Like, why would you think that? What would make? They're like, we're going to introduce a buyback program. Please bring your unlawful weapons in, and we will give you money for them. And then you're like, oh no, I better stash these weapons. Hopefully Big Brother's not watching me. Oh no, they're watching me. Look out.
Right. Within a certain amount of time, once that time passes, right,
So
owning that particular weapon.
Voluntary. It's not voluntary at all.
I mean, it's voluntary. It's
in the sense that any law is voluntary, right? Like, okay, seatbelt analogy, go.
it's voluntary as far as it's your decision whether or not you want to bring it in and make money or not.
Whether you follow any law, it's as voluntary as any law.
Yeah. So to treat buybacks like they're voluntary in the slightest is sort of it misrepresents the situation.
No, it is voluntary. It's just like any law. You're voluntarily following,
Okay, the laws are involuntary.
Like
I mean, you still ultimately decide whether or not
following them is voluntary.
Yeah, you following them, not the law itself.
Seatbelt on. Or they can fine you after the fact. They can't make you wear a seatbelt.
Correct.
Yeah. So,
I think that violates the definition. I mean, you can't. If that's the standard of voluntary, then anything they can't. Then nothing is involuntary.
Yeah, it sounds like a voluntary rape victim.
They have to literally hold you. Yeah.
No, the rape victim didn't rape themselves.
But they didn't prohibit the other person from doing it. They
may have tried.
Accepted it.
I mean,
but this is just to Batman. This is to Batman's point, right? Why this is never going to work in America, because the majority of Americans are going to respond like Flow State and Hillary just did right now. And then you're going to have other levels of that response going down the chain, mine included in that chain. But the simple fact is what you hit on, Batman, which is 100% right, is, or I'm sorry, I would just, it's cultural. It's not somewhat like cultural.
Oh, perfect. Right there. So it's cultural. It's embedded in the society. You can't, how do you change the culture? How do you change the culture and the mentality around guns? Well, it's certainly not by defending the right to have guns merely for the fucking sake of it. That doesn't ever change it. That's not, how is that going to change? Oh, but no, wait. Gird your loins.
Cultural. This is 100% culture and ideology, because Americans raise their children on the site. There are certain Americans that raise their kids to believe in all kinds of things. Jesus and guns are among two in certain parts of this country that Second Amendment and Jesus go hand in hand.
But how naive of a viewpoint is that, really, though? Step back and look at the world over the last 100 years. Have people been more harmed by other citizens with guns or by governments?
Well, hold on.
What a loaded question. Aren't governments other citizens with guns? You're talking about militaries or police forces, which are agents of government, which are constituent of the people of the place, then that they are trusted with armaments and authority. We stumbled into a conundrum. Okay.
What do you mean? Were you talking about my viewpoint?
Yeah, your perspective. Which is like, I don't mean to be. That was kind of a pointed way of phrasing it.
I just want to add to what Darkness said before we get off that topic. There's another aspect to it. So what was your point,
Sammy? Well, I want to know what he's calling naive, because my only thing was, in America, they are raising their kids to believe in the Constitution and the Second Amendment as emphatically as they are Jesus. I don't think that's a naive point. That's just a fact of the matter.
I mean, that was I assumed that it was I correct in interpreting that as also meaning like it's sort of dismissive. Were you being dismissive of it in that stroke?
What are you talking about dismissive? I'm talking about what Batman said was, it's kind of like culture, or somewhat like culture, or whatever the word he used. And I thought, no, it's absolutely our American certain aspects.
No, that's literally what he said. He said it is in the culture, and you can't, there's no, you have to change the culture. That's what he said.
We do have that culture.
Guns go hand in hand. I'm saying not with Jesus.
Guns and Jesus, no, it's like turn the other cheek, but blow the motherfucker's brains out if he fucks with you. No, that doesn't actually add up. No, like it's the same people claiming the ideology, but they're not congruent in their stance here.
Jesus, but they are
Yeah. It's very
But
American.
You weren't saying it was sort of an
God and guns.
unnecessary or focus. You weren't implying that it's sort of not necessary. It's just part of the culture.
No, I'm just saying that someone
All right, my bad.
Yeah, it's
Retracted.
part of the culture because of the same way that Jesus is part of the culture, the same way that food is part of our culture. Guns are as ingrained in the American ideology for a lot of Americans.
Wait. Guns, Jesus, food? No. I mean, you're saying that people see this as a necessity to their survival when we can see that it's logically not, and yet it may be even counterproductive to their survival, and yet they need to keep this thing on board because they hold some forlorn. Is that right? It's a foregone conclusion. Right. So back in the day, it was possible for somebody to just come on your land and shoot you and take your shit, commit atrocity, and nobody would ever hear about it. But now you can YouTube live that shit, and so atrocities just never happen anymore, right?
As anything else in this country, right?
I think
Sorry.
I think if you gave Americans the a situation where they have to choose between, for example, religion and owning guns, they'll pick guns.
Later,
right?
Jesus.
Or even free speech.
Right?
Jesus is
Right?
out the fucking door.
I would definitely choose the guns.
More than cultural, right? You've
free speech versus guns.
No, over Jesus, I mean.
And Sammy, you're 100% right. It's more than cultural, but
Video frozen. Chromebook overheating. World imploding. Oh, somehow it got paused.
but I just wanted to touch on that one particular part of what drives America, because in my opinion, two biggest things are politics and culture.
The two biggest things are politics and culture. I don't know about all that. I mean, well, culture, yeah. Most people are just concerned about whatever bullshit they're involved in at the time, and they care less about other people's bullshit, right? So, seems to be a very self-serving system. All right. This great increase of the quantity of work, which, in consequence of the division of labor, the same number of people are capable of performing, is owing to three different circumstances. First, to the increase of dexterity in every particular workman. Secondly, to the saving of time, which is commonly lost in passing from one species of work to another. And lastly, to the invention of a great number of machines, which facilitate and abridge labor and enable one man to do the work of many. First, the improvement of the dexterity of the workman necessarily increases the quantity of the work he can perform, and the division of labor by reducing every man's business to some one simple operation, and by making this operation the sole employment of his life, necessarily increased very much the dexterity of the workman. A common smith, who, thought accustomed to handle the hammer, has never been used to make nails. If upon some particular occasion he is obliged to attempt it, will scarce, I'm assured, be able to make above 200 or 300 nails in a day, and those two very bad ones. A smith who has been accustomed to make nails, but whose sole or principal business has not been that of a nailer, can seldom, with his utmost diligence, make more than 800 or 1,000 nails in a day. I have seen several boys under 20 years of age who had never exercised any other trade but that of making nails, and who, when they exerted themselves, could make each of them upwards of 2,300 nails in a day. The making of a nail, however, is by no means one of the simplest operations. The same person blows the bellows, stirs or mends the fire as there is occasion, heats the iron, and forges every part of the nail. In forging the head, too, he is obliged to change his tools. The different operations into which the making of a pin or of a metal button is subdivided are all of them much more simple, and the dexterity of the person whose life it has been the sole business to perform them is usually much greater. The rapidity with which some of the operations of those manufactures are performed exceeds what the human hand could, by those who had never seen them, be supposed capable of acquiring. And battery life dwindling. We'll be off, and wish you much luck, much success, and hoping we get the same, putting karma out into the universe.
Keep it real, homies.
But look, we're dealing with a lot of weird people on the internet here.
Lockdown Records presents a Hip Hop Christmas. You'll get such classics as These Nuts Roasted on an Open Fire, A Sleigh Ride in My 64, Annie Up Bitch, It's Christmas, and many more.
buy that
You can't
shit,
get this
son.
2 CD set.
But so many people say that they want to see the light. They want to be enlightened. They want to dissolve into the light of God. Then when they've done that, all over again, the process goes on, and it blows out those mud balls. And here are planets, and here once again, you're a baby. You're a child. The flowers are brilliantly colored. The stars are gorgeous. The smell of the earth, the sound of the rain, everything is marvelous once again. And once again you see the other, the man, the woman that you love, as if it had never happened before.